All right, what's up, everybody? Finn the CM back, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the Madden 21 beta that came out and that jazz. So, got my little notes here. Gonna talk about a couple things. First thing, we'll talk a little bit about just playing the game. How did it feel on both sides of the ball? Some things, and then I'll kind of end it up with going over some of the new features, some of the things that the beta got to expose us to a little bit. And one just popped in my mind, so type that down. Um, so yeah, anyways, I'm just hop right into it. I don't want to prelude too much. Everybody knows the beta came out, and everybody, or a good chunk of the league, got their hands on it. So it was fun playing with the guys I did get to play with. But personally, for me, when I'm playing a beta, you have to remember, one, it is a beta, but the game is coming out in 2 months. So this is pretty or 1 month, almost 1.5. So this is about what we're gonna get. In terms of the real thing, so it's not like alpha where it's 4 or 5 months out. So there's going to only be really minor changes, and then of course everything that happens a month into the game's release, that's going to change the whole scope of everything. Game might not even play the same. So everybody really liked the Madden 20 beta and the first EA Access. I remember me, Ty, and all the guys playing just absolutely loved the game, and then they patched zones, and then there goes that. So sorry, just as something comes to my mind, I'm throwing it at the bottom of my list here. So let's just hop right into gameplay. Whenever I'm playing, I'm not really playing to win in the beta. I don't know why people would play to win. I don't know why. And Morin said this, like, why are you doing your Madden 20 stuff? Like, you're playing for, like, just to fill it out. Like, yes, you know it worked in Madden 20 and those blitzes and everything. But you should be trying to figure out, like, how does this game play? Like, that way maybe you won't have to do all that Madden 20 bullshit that you've been labbing. But whatever. Let's go to offense, and the first thing I have is running. With the new skill stick, I still am not getting what I wanted, but I've kind of talked about what I want with that, the skill stick. But it is fluid. It feels a little bit better. I do like the animation of, we talked a little bit about the journal. I don't know what they're classifying as the journal, but there is a specific jump cut juke versus a juke that's kind of like this little, like, kind of a finesse step over. Julio did it a couple times. It was really nice. They actually cross the feet when they do it. But it's fluid. It looks nice. Anything that's like visually appealing. I wish you could kind of trigger. I still don't like that it's just hit left for the juke animation, or hit right for the juke animation, and the game takes over. Would like to see something where you like double tap or tap and go around, kind of like skate and FIFA. I've talked about that before. I don't want to go into it. Let's talk about what exists now and how we like it. Up being hurdle now is a little bit, some people are going to have to get used to that. The left trigger, I saw a lot of people. Allen fumbled a couple times with left trigger. I don't know how I feel. I don't like celebration should not be a back of box thing, and then celebration shouldn't have its own, like the whole left trigger. Like, think about how many possible inputs you have on a controller, and you just took the whole left trigger for offense, and it is now celebration. Like, I just feel like there's just so many more. Like, how about decelerate? There could be a skill gap to like decelerate down with the left stick, kind of get the feet chopping like you would see if you're cutting for a route, or like Shady McCoy does. And then that way, if you do that, then if you have a good kind of timing between accelerating and decelerating on your cuts, it'll kind of present more of a skill gap. Whereas if you just try to cut at full speed, you're not going to get the same kind of cut, or whatever the case may be. But no, they just throw it at celebrations, an entire button dedicated to your guy going in the mid run. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, and it's not a lot of foresight. So that was frustrating, not only from a button change perspective where people are getting confused, but the fact that the entire button is dedicated to that, celebrating on the run. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because you have another thing Warren mentioned, you can hold RB while running and still do jukes, whereas in the past, cover the ball, you would be stopped from doing those things. So aside from that, though, I did try dive bounce. It didn't work too well. Kind of blending into edge defense, but I felt like there was a required patience. I didn't feel like there were constant, I didn't feel like there was this constant big play potential in the run game. I did feel like I had to grind it out. I think I only had one game over 100 yards. And that was in one game where I did get a big 60, 70-yard run to start, and then it was grinding out the rest. So very interested to see how that progresses. As long as swerve is gone, there still was a little bit of swerve ability there, but I did get a sense that the defensive tackling logic was better. Guys were a little bit, they suction a little bit more, which I don't hate. I like that in terms of swerve. But the animations did look clean. I didn't get a lot of weird. In fact, I did get an animation where Lamar got caught and he kind of got this like delayed spin out animation, and as he was spinning out, I was still in control of my guy, and I just kind of retracted to where Lamar was, and then he finally got the tackle. So it actually felt like a battle. Like if I would have given up and been like, oh, like he got it, but no, because I kept moving my player and strafing to the right, he ended up recovering and getting the sack anyways, instead of in the past where once the animation hits, you just kind of feel fucked per se. And everybody's seen it. Kyle has experienced it, I think, with Hines, where it's just like you have, like, once the animation triggers, everybody else is dumb, can't make a tackle, and then the dude spins out and he's gone to the house because everybody else, yeah, you didn't get that speed boost, bad angles, yeah. So I didn't feel that, I didn't get that, but I also didn't play an abundance of games, so it still has the potential to happen. Somebody just messaged me in chat. 1 second. Let me see what's going on here. Oh, that was good old Mark. All right, but I didn't get to test it too much, but there was a little bit I did on accident combining the skill stick. So my opinions on the skill stick in the open field might change once I get my hands on it a little bit more. Do a lot of different spins and combining of the animations. If that's really fluid, then I'm a big fan. Anything to where it just seems like every year we figure out what move works, and then everybody kind of does the same thing. So when you're watching, it doesn't feel like skill. It just feels like you just know when to press B to spin for Madden 19 or Madden 20. You just know when to swerve. There weren't a lot of guys that were doing unique stuff. So if there's a specific skill gap creation by the skill stick, then that's what I'm for. So if that is what it presents as we get our hands on more, and then once we start seeing some of the running back abilities, we'll go into the abilities later that we do get to see, but there wasn't a running back that was superstar in the beta outside of Lamar Jackson. So, and I don't mean that running back. I just meant a primarily running player. So there's that. Another thing too, I did like the ability in, they talk about here with fatigue. If a running back runs the football, be it a jet sweep, be it a quarterback scramble, the fatigue really, really hits them because they're not really used to carrying that load. So I don't know if it's based on how long the run was. Like if I get a 2-yard run, I might be just as fatigued as if I just cranked a 60-yard jet sweep. But it seems like in an effort to force you to use more players or to kind of be limited or make running backs the premier of that, I did notice a fatigue. I ran one jet sweep with Marquise Brown or Hollywood Brown. He got 10 yards or so, and then he was like yellow on the next play and it was like the first play of the game. So that did stand out to me quite a bit. So let's talk about passing. So with the zone depth glitch, in which it kept resetting to 0, passing, I don't have too big of an opinion on it from the beta. I will say it seems like they've messed a little bit with the trajectories that were prevalent in Madden 20. Some of those throws just simply aren't there anymore. A lot more of those Maddens of old where guys are just jumping up, picking the football off. I was a big fan of trajectories. I felt like it resulted in a game that was a little bit more about making right reads, and even if it was, I understood that the DBs weren't playing as well, and they were watching plays pass. So, like, to watch the ball go over a DB's head when he was 5 yards in front of the route, I think one of the key things to remember is that with our camera angle that we're playing the game in, the distance between players is a lot different versus if we were watching it from the side. I feel like if you could rewatch a play from the side, you'd be like, oh, he really wasn't right under the route. But now it looks like in Madden 21, they're back to picking those balls off with ease. Lots of jumping up. I had one where I threw a RPO slant, and Whitehead from the Bucks jumped up like he was blitzing and just reached up mid-blitz and snagged it. So I don't want that. So I'm not a big fan of that. I really hope that trajectories are still a part of the game because you should never be sprinting full speed for a blitz, reach up, and be able to snag a slant. Like either the slant's going too fast, it needs to. Now there were some batted balls, and I did like the batted balls. I love the idea that if you try to throw a pass with a guy right in your face, he reaches up and smacks it down. But there needs to be more incomplete passes versus picks. Too often in Madden are you in a situation where you either threw a catch or a pick. And then if it was incomplete, it was because it got batted. Like there's not just bad throws. Like I just want to see a dirt one, you know. So that's what I'm kind of looking for with the throw out a sack feature. Is like you throwing one in the dirt at your receiver's feet. It doesn't need to be this like, oh, I was getting sacked, so now I threw a laser to the closest safety. Like no, just try to throw it near the guy and at its feet kind of deal, or you threw it high or whatever. Like not everything needs to result in a pick, and I think that just comes down to the logic they have between passing, because it has to like lock onto a target. You're not really able to specify where on the field. So I don't know how much coding plays into a factor, but I don't like to use it as a cop out. So passing, I just have to say it to be determined as we kind of talk a little bit about usering. We'll get more into that, but playbooks were largely the same. I didn't playbook scrouge. Once again, I didn't get that in depth into the beta, but all of them were available from what I saw. It was fun to use the new features of personnel packages. So I did that a couple times, and that's gonna kind of play a role, because what I was noticing is when I was in nickel, I was getting ran all over. Anytime somebody just kind of put on the ground and ran out of nickel, I was getting absolutely dominated until I was in 4-3, 3-4, really dedicated to the run. So I hope that continues, because that plays a role in if I come out in empty, but I'm in 2 tight end and you call a play because you saw me in gun empty and you went nickel or dime or dollar. Well, I have 2 tight ends. I see that, and then I can counter that by getting down in the I formation or single back and running the football against a primarily defensive back set. If that's something that we see as a result, I like that. So, and just to kind of further expand on what that is just if you come out in a certain personnel package, they've now allowed it to where when you're audibling, you just have more access to all the different formations in your playbook that also have those personnel packages. If not all of them. I don't know if it's going to be all of them, but I know that Mole was big on that, and I know that some other guys were talking about that. Talk about animations blocking. Running back blocking seems to be largely improved. I did not have to ID the mic one time, but there was a specific play against Warren. I moved Gurley over to the right side. Calais Campbell breaks my left tackle's hopes and dreams, and he's coming straight shot for Matt Ryan. I'm literally looking at my peripheral because I'm waiting for Julio to get open. And I just see out of the peripheral Todd Gurley double back and just chop block the hell out of Calais Campbell. Matt Ryan slides over. Throws a touchdown, actually ended up being a touchdown, but a big pass to Julio. And that play obviously doesn't happen without Todd. So that's something I want to keep in mind, because once again, we're talking about skill gaps. The difference between a guy who will say, I need time. I want to throw a post. I need time. Keep the running back in, versus guys that kind of check out and they're just like, all right, running back can run a wheel or whatever. And then you're lacking that 6th man in protection. So that was good. If running back blocking stays the same, I didn't see too many like super like dumb animations where the blockers just didn't get beat. Like I saw blockers get beat, but it was more of a fluid beat versus the center didn't pick up anything and he just stood there at the line of scrimmage. Once again, I could go back and rewatch more if I had streams of everything, and then I could see if I could, if there's something, because I'm not noticing everything on every play. The sack numbers are definitely low, and that kind of gets into the defensive side of the ball, where they're starting to put a focus, I guess, this year on pass rushing. So the new mechanics, from what I understand, is there's like a little bar. I think it's up to 6 or something, and that's when based on if it's filled in blue or white. If it's white, it means it's empty. If it's blue, it means it's full. So if you have 3 blue bars on a player, that means they have 3 moves, I guess, on that specific rush or that they can try. And then if it's up to 6, I guess it's like that's their max, like I guess they're most ready to win on that play versus, not a complete understanding, but I did notice, and I do think that there's going to be a little bit of skill involved. It does seem that it's a little bit easier if you're a user, if you have experience, or if you kind of really sit down. It can introduce a new element to your game. I still don't see the top guys of the league doing that. I don't see myself doing that. Just because of how little control usering has felt. So if if you guys start running man, they feel like they can trust their guys in man to an extent, but with zones, it feels too unpredictable in what your guys are going to do. So depending on how those things get worked out, I could see maybe a couple more guys moving over to doing it, but Yeah, it's just gonna have to be a how well it gets bounced. I mean, really, if you're not getting any pressure at all without it, then yeah, you're gonna see guys start turning to trying to do it on their own. In terms of non-superstar, but that's another thing is like, do you use your superstar guy and just try to win? Yeah, you'll get the win, but maybe you screw up on the animation, or do you just try to up the ability of your non-superstar edge rusher, let your star do it, do his thing, and you do it, and then maybe that's just more pressure applied. So that'll be a good skill gap. Now, some people, Warren, are not going to see using D-line as a skill gap thing. I'm torn on what I think applies as user skill or pressing buttons. So it looks like it's not going to be button mashing. As long as it's not button mashing, there is a UI. I haven't seen an explanation, but there is something on the offensive lineman on either side. So there's like a little bar behind each offensive lineman, and both sides of the ball can see it. So if you're on offense, you can see the defensive side. If you're on defense, you can see the offensive side, kind of deal. And I don't know if they're matching up. It might be like, I don't want too much information to go to the defense. I don't want you to be able to tell like out the gate who's not ready for an inside move or outside move. But it looked like that bar, when filled with orange, means that the offensive lineman is strong there and weak there. So I don't know if that's a result of an ability, or if that's just going to always be available for you to see which way is best to beat an offensive lineman. I feel like that should be something either an ability strikes up so a good pass rusher can see the guy in front of him, whether he's strong or weak to his left or his right, or tendencies, or whatever the case may be. Because I once again, I think it would be unfair if you're using a D-line and you know the guy is strong outside and weak inside. Like, it's like you need to figure that out yourself, especially if the mechanic itself is going to be overpowered. That way you don't just club inside, or maybe there's a way to set them up. So I don't know what it all means, but that's what I'm looking for whenever the game drops, because that's important information, especially for when we're picking teams. Because if a defense is going to have information on how good your offensive line is on either side of them every play, I feel like it could get a little bit manipulated. You might be in some trouble. It's good on user defenses. So it's weird how defense can suck and be really good at the same time. So, and that goes back to where the trajectories are gone, and it seems like crazy animations are back, but the downside is that's only if they're in remote position to do that. They feel a little sluggish, and it's kind of hard to get up. So I think it might be patched to death because of the competitive community seems to really adore their usering ability. I don't know where I stand. I'm a football. I feel like I'm a big football like sim guy. So I like the concept of it being harder to user. I think it provides more of a skill gap than you think. Some people will look at my same statement and be like, "Oh, you just want to like be able to play like one zone and let the game do it for you or whatever." I disagree. I think the current nature of usering in the past has catered to those who are reading and reacting. They're not anticipating. Madden doesn't do a good job at making routes look different. So for the most part, every slant looks the same. Every post looks the same. When you see a slant's coming, you probably know this is coming or this, that. Like, there's not a lot because guys all run routes the same. It would be hell on earth if you were trying to play Odell and his routes look different. Like, you know a zig's coming, and when somebody starts running that zig cut, you know, and you just bounce on it. But what if the receiver had a different animation or a different bag of animations or route running packages that would kind of throw you off for a loop? And I think that Madden needs that. But this isn't a wish list. This is a beta review. But I feel like it really isn't that big of a skill thing when it's like they're unleashed and they can just cut on a dime. I don't feel like that's skill. You know, one of the things, and I don't want to shit on a league user, but people say like, "Oh, Tony's got one of the best users in the league," but he's not a very good Madden player in all other aspects. So is it just like Tony just has got usering down and everything else he just sucks at? No, it's usering is not a skill gap thing. The fact right now, it's with it being unleashed, there is nothing. Like, you could just recover off of coming up to play a slant. Like, you're not making educated decisions based on down and distance on where I need to be. It's just, let me grab the fastest safety I got and sprint around in circles. And I'm guilty of benefiting and winning games off of that. And I think that should be harder. And what I mean by harder is it needs to be, as we talk, I'll just kind of lead this right into this change of direction feature that I like the concept of, but I do not believe it is ready. So while I'm saying this, do not keep in mind, I do not think using as it was in the beta is acceptable, and pass defense in the beta is acceptable. But I do not want to go back to what we've had before. So change of direction. Apparently, per the devs, elusiveness is something that has only affected the offensive side of the ball in Madden. And change of direction is going to be taking over elusiveness, and it works hand in hand with agility. So how they described it is change of direction rating is how quickly they can go and decelerate and make a sharp cut, what you would classify as a sharp cut. I would imagine there's two classification of cuts: sharp cut, and then like just kind of momentum cut or speed cut. Speed cut would be unaffected by this change of direct, like if as long as it doesn't meet a threshold or whatever, it's just your normal, what we've seen before, just the ability to like turn and go with speed. Change of direct, or the sharp cut would be having to decelerate to make the change of speed. Now, a player's change of direction is how quickly they can do that, or how well they do that. So 90, that change of direction ability is very quick. Whenever they're in the sharp turn mode, like it's like sharp turn mode is activated, and now how quick are they? And that's that ability. Agility seems to determine whether or not when you're making a cut, whether it's going to be a speed cut or a sharp turn cut. So if you're in that, this is once again, it's kind of speculation, but like once you hit 90, like if you're 90 agility, most of your window for whether or not it's going to be a momentum cut where you keep all your speed is probably going to be pretty high anyways, so that range is better. But when you see that and you're in that 80s, you just kind of closes a little bit, and it's like, oh, that cut that he made, he was able to momentum cut, but you can't. So now you're in sharp cut mode where you're decelerating, and now your change of direction takes over versus your acceleration rating or whatever. So that's kind of how I imagine, and if that's how it works, I do like it. It's going to force people to play like you would play normal coverage instead of sprinting up. Sprinting up is always the beginning of the end for think, I'm not a baseball guy, but outfield, I've always heard you don't want to be sprinting up until you're sure you need to get up there. It's all about backpedaling, being patient, especially in zone, gaining depth, and then breaking on the ball. As it is now, you don't have to back up and then break. You just sprint at one guy, turn sprint in the other. The fact that you can go full speed with a sprinting player on a slant, stop, and turn around and get the oncoming slant is absolutely insane. It's broken, should not exist in a Madden game, but it does, and that's what the community seems to like. So not a big fan of that at all. So if this is the beginning of the end of that, to where now defensive players are affected with this change of direction, then you're going to have to make a decision. So how do you counter that? Zone depth seems to be something that they would like to help, where in your mind you can set the backside, or you could say, okay, I'm going to run cover 3, so I want those purple zones to drop deeper. Why? Because when those slants come, they tend to get behind where the purple zones are automatically set. Say they're already set to 10 yards at the purple zone. Well, the slants, as they come across, end up 15-20 on the late side, so I want it to be 15-20. That way, if they try to throw that late slant, it's going to be an easy pick. And then in your scenario as the user, you're like, okay, I had the purple zone set there, so I can use this other one, and then I got those double slants covered or slants across the field. That way, when those slants are crossing, you can make a decision. I know I got backside help over here on the purple zone, so I'm going to stay with this one kind of deal. And then now we're talking about skill and IQ and like making decisions pre-snap and post-snap that are helping you to win, versus the idea that you can cover both with one guy. That's simply unacceptable in terms of a Madden game. The downside is I don't know if zone depths are going to work like that. Now, zone depth seems like a good idea. The issue is they should not reset. 2, I would like you to be able to set them on each side. I think asymmetric offenses is a big thing. From what I've seen is if you can hot route, or if you hot route a player's zone at the line of scrimmage, it negates that. So if you set cloud flats to 5, and that's something you should pre-labbing too. Is like if I set hot routes or clouds flats to 5s, if I said light blue zones to 5 route or 5 yards, or not 15. Let's say I want them to get depth, so I set it to 15. So if somebody's a purple at the line of scrimmage and I change them to that, is it going to set to the default of it and make it a 5-yard cloud flat? Or if I change it to a cloud flat, they'll play what I have it set within the coaching options. That's something that you should be labbing, because you should know if you're like, oh, I'm at the line of scrimmage and I want to negate everything about my zone depth. I don't want to go with that 15 yards. I think he's going to come out and run a quick flat now or quick out now. Then if I just like change the play at the line of scrimmage or change somebody's zone, will it default back to the default? So that's something to lab. I didn't get a chance to, but that's what I'm looking for, is maybe allow it to work asymmetrically. And then what happens if you start making changes to the line of scrimmage? Will it hold what you set? So something to keep in mind. I just didn't get a chance to really do that. For some reason during the beta I was checking it out. But I do like the concept. I love how it's going to work with change of direction and usering, and I just think it's a matter of getting our hands on it and playing it. So defense is always going to be hard. It's hard every cycle. I feel like every beta people are just scoring. And that's just because offense doesn't change as much as defense does, especially something this drastic. Let's see. We talked a little bit about button mapping on the celebration and the trucking and the hurdling. I think it's just going to take time, but once again, celebrations doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We talked about juke stick, the pass rushing. Blitzing AI seems to be something that wasn't working too well, and I will admit getting pressure seemed to be very, very difficult. In the same token, Escape Artists did not feel as insane as it did in Madden 20, and I like that. It seems like it does take a little bit for them to get going, and then they're not 99 speed. And I hope that on Escape Artists they're just unlocking your ability to get up to your top speed behind the line of scrimmage. I did get a chance to run a couple games with Trace McSorley and RG3, but I didn't get enough data. And what I was looking for is like, what about a non-escape artist guy? Last year, Kyler Murray or Carson Wentz or these athletic quarterbacks, they just negated because they don't have escape artists. And I feel like there has to be a happy medium. And from what I've seen, we're kind of getting to that happy medium. They've kind of nerfed escape artists a little bit. I would like to see non-escape artist guys kind of progress, but once again, it all seems to kind of be a little bit more balanced than it was last year. So another thing to look out for that I have on my list. Reaching for the pylon animation, I noticed it a little bit. There was one where I was like, oh, he didn't get the first down, and he got it. So like, it will make a difference. I will say that those plays where you were so close, I feel like now, depending on whatever causes your player to reach for the pylon, whether it be awareness, play rec, or some other trait, I think it will have an effect, and hopefully it does. We talked about the offensive line, fluidity, trajectories. All right, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is some of the new abilities that came out that we got to see, and new things surrounding the X Factor and Superstar realm of X Factor 2.0, and then we'll get out of here as this is pushing 30 minutes. New abilities. So 3 abilities for the non-quarterbacks, at least the X Factor ones, is what I saw. So I don't know if that's something like it's 2 for superstars. If you X Factor, you get a 3rd, or if they're just going to allow 3. But I did feel 2 was a little limiting. What I like about abilities is it creates the ability. It creates a situation where you can have more unique players. What separates Christian McCaffrey from another guy is the abilities. I mean, obviously you have the speed, but speed is always there in Madden. The juke is nice, but like having jukebox versus just having 90 juke. Like we could both have 90 juke, but I have jukebox, you don't. Like it, so it's just a separator, and it makes players a little bit more unique. You know, he has jukebox and satellite, or this, that, or the third. Kelsey, he has red zone, and he has deep out, and he has leapfrog. Which changed this year, I think. I think leapfrog now is just you don't fumble when you hurdle, versus before I think it was you could still fumble, but you just get a crazy animation. But yes, 3 abilities. I like that. I would imagine that goes 80, 85, 90 for the overalls versus 80 and 90 as before, on top of an X Factor. So I like that. Just need to see what it applies to. The receiver and the DB abilities seem to be now based less on the route and more on route location, short, medium, and deep, and then inside or outside of the numbers. So still kind of falls under it. But what I didn't like guys like Mike Evans last year or TJ Hawkinson that had like comeback and curl. Like it just, they're not very well used routes. So now you can see deep outs, corners. It's all about how far down the field they are, and then whether it's an in breaking route or an out breaking route. It's not perfect, but once again, I think it creates a little bit more unique. It seems like before it was like, oh, you're going to get post or streak specialist or post corner specialist, and I just feel like it just makes it a little bit more unique. Plus, that third ability can create a little bit more. You might have a guy who's got route technician, deep in, and it just, the more the better, as long as they're not too overpowered. But creating these different molds, because it does get boring when every receiver seems to be the same. It's just different variations of speed post the entire time. Trust is Lamar Jackson's ability. This is a new unique X Factor ability. After what looked like 8 runs of a yard or more or whatever it was, he can't fumble. I don't hate it. Doesn't seem OP. It seems like just an X Factor ability. Just like, oh, okay, well, he's not going to fumble. Cool. I mean, you can still tackle him. Doesn't like do anything crazy. Just he knows that person knows that they can take more risk on that run. So cool. Let's see. Escape artist or not escape artist we talked about. So last one is going to be the big one that a lot of people don't like. Warren doesn't like it, and I'm going to exit with this one. It's Film Study by Earl Thomas. So I called for this exact ability last year with Luke Kuechly, and I think I love it. The idea that you're going to replicate what makes the football IQ guys, the high football IQ guys, what separates them from guys in the league, the film study guys like Chris Harris Jr., like these dudes that just like spend so much time in the film room, and it's hard because when you're behind the sticks, only the users now football IQ can help them. And some people will see it as, once again, a skill gap negator, something that caters to new users, but I don't agree. Now, would I be able to rule against film study being in the game if we made other adjustments? Sure, and I'll get into those. But as it stands, if you don't know, film study is Earl Thomas's ability. He's the only one that has it in the beta. I will point out, I do want this to be a rare ability, not something like Jukebox or something that's like all over the place across the league. This should be something that at max 2 people have across the whole league. And the only people that come to mind for the defensive side of the ball would be Earl Thomas and then like maybe Bobby Wagner. But what happens is if you run a play more than 4 times in a game, once you run it 4 times, it activates, and Earl will now see that play's play art every time you run it after. So if you run a play 5 times in the game or more, essentially, Earl Thomas is going to see it. Not only is Earl Thomas going to see it, but he can track multiple plays. So if you're running multiple plays more than 5 times in a game, then he can see it every time you call it throughout the game. It doesn't go away. This isn't an X Factor ability. This is a superstar ability. And then third, he can see all hot routes. Every single hot route. If you call running play and he can see when you flip it, he can see every single hot route that you make. So that is the ability in a nutshell. From what I understand, that's all. I like multiple plays. I feel like Earl's smart enough to see multiple plays. I like showing the play art. What would I like to see? Maybe not showing the play art. Like where would I be able to meet in the middle? First off is the hot routes. I just make it to where if they hot route the route in the play art, that route goes away. So it's gone now. That is the counter that user has. Is I've called the play again, so now I'm going to change that route. So now it disappears off of the play art for Earl Thomas. So you know that route is gone, or maybe it just doesn't change at all. So you don't know which one. I mean, you'll know which one got hot routed because of the animations that occur. But I do agree that might be a little bit overpowered, especially being able to see which way the run is. Because those aren't things that happened before. You came out and you ran the ball, whatever. Or you changed it. Next, I would be more so if it was given like a vibration warning that a play that has occurred before is happening. That way, it's like Earl letting you know, hey, you've seen this at least 4 times before, instead of the play art. Maybe the play art is a little bit overpowered, but if it was like, hey, you've seen this play before. Now, as a user, you're looking at formation, you're kind of keeping track, and you're like, okay, well, I've seen this play before, and every time he comes out in this formation, he's in, he runs QB draw Lamar, so I should be waiting for QB draw Lamar. Same thing if we're in strong eye and he's been running stretch and it starts vibrating or buzzing, or maybe Earl's player starts flashing up until he changes the play, whatever, then that tells me that, okay, and now I have to recall, I have to remember. It doesn't just handhold me this, hey, here's what the play is, and every hot route that he makes. I do feel like it, as it is with showing that it's not so overpowered as Ricky said for leagues, especially in a league where you shouldn't be running the same play 5 times anyways. I'm guilty of that, so fuck it. But nonetheless, in a competitive community, which was what seemed to be Warren's concerns, what can we do? And I think that might be the meat in the middle, to allow this ability, or abilities that project the mental aspect of these players, and what separates them from the rest of the pack, without being too much of a hand-holding scenario. So I think move it to vibrating, or an on-key alert that Earl is giving. Maybe just that same exclamation point you have with Russell Wilson's ability last year with knowing who was blitzing and whatnot. That pops up over Earl's head, and that tells you as the user of the Ravens defense, yo, this play has happened before. Now I have to piece it together. What play was it? And if they do it out of the same formation, then, okay. They mixing it up within the formation. Earl can kind of pick it up, but not too much to where it's overpowered. So that's all I'll say about that. I'm excited to see what other abilities come out. They said there was like 50 or 100 more or whatever the heck from last year. So I think creating more unique players. Calais Campbell has the edge threat ability, whereas J.J. Watt was the only interior lineman last year that had it. So as a CM, we have to look at that as well as change of direction and make decisions based on what we want to do in terms of defensive backs playing sub linebacker. Do we allow guys like J.J. Watt and Calais Campbell to move around? Last year, the rule with J.J. Watt was you get to make a one-time choice. Is he an edge or is he a D tackle? Now, from my perspective, 1, if defense is harder, and 2, with the way that these abilities are working, do I want to throw in the mix that we allow Calais and J.J. Watt, or any big boy that's got, defensive tackle abilities and build, but also has this edge threat ability? Can that be the catalyst to allow them to move all over the place? Whereas in base defense, they can play inside and on the edge, or they can play rush edge or rush DT, whatever your preference is. Because I think all the CMs, we're having great conversations about perfect conversations about hybrid players, and allowing guys like Derwin James and Jamal Adams and Isaiah Simmons coming into the league, J.J. Watt, just hybrid guys on the defensive side of the ball that can truly move everywhere, Tyrann Mathieu, and do a lot of things. How much do we want to limit? How much do we want to make sure it isn't abused from a sim standpoint? But at the same time, what allows us to be more creative? I want to see, as a CM, I want to see very creative offenses. I really enjoyed watching everybody's games last year and seeing some of the unique things people were doing. So as we get all this new information, keep that in mind. And if it pops into your mind, shoot me, Danny Pest, Warren, Jose a DM. Not Jose, he's not going to respond. Shoot everybody else a DM and let us know, hey, here's an idea I had for a rule that might help us out. We should allow any so-and-so that wants to do this to play this position or whatever. And whatever pops in your mind, we'll take it seriously, we'll review it, and we'll make a decision that's best for the league. But I think new game, new rules, let's see what we can do to make Top the most unique league without it ending up being a mutt cheese fest where we're just running money plays. Those kind of things. So thanks for watching. If you did, I think we're maybe 30 or 40 minutes in, so that'll cut that. Beta was fine, just still a lot of questions that I got. But a lot of things, a lot of discussion to come. So if you watched and you have a comment on it, let me know. We'll talk about it in chat. And until then, see you guys next time.